prepare your black walnut forest for harvesting the black walnuts. This is my forest. It's approximately 20 to 30 years of age. Originally it was just a cornfield turned into a wheat field, turned into a soybean field, finally an alfalfa field. And then we decided to start planting walnuts, and that was about 1980. We're about halfway in the middle of the forest at this point, and we are a certified forest as well as being a black walnut tree farm. Growing the walnuts not just for the walnuts but for the veneer. And if you notice, the trees are all 10 feet apart and the first branch is up at this point almost 20 to 30 feet high. Now these trees are only 20 years old and they're only approximately 10 feet in 10 inches in diameter. I'm going to walk down the row. I'm walking to the east, nice and slow, and you can see that there's quite a bit of grass underneath. This grass and weeds have only been cut once this year. In preparation to harvesting the walnuts, you have to get the grass down to where it's less than 2 inches high, and most of the limbs, which you see on the ground here, like that, need to be shorter so they're not sticking up off the ground. Otherwise, they will interfere with picking the walnuts into the walnut nut wizard. I'm turning to the south, to the north now. As you can see, as I turn around, the trees are all in a nice diagonal row. That was intentional, of course. That's how you prepare your forest for planting as a tree farm. Side of the forest, where you can, the trees on this side are just about the same age as where we were, 25 years and higher. And I have this one tree right here on the very western edge, and where that ring is around there is the mark where last year it had walnut trees, and that's approximately 4 feet off the ground, 3.5 feet off the ground. And you notice as I walk around it, I'm going to pan up, and you will see some other trees in the same area that produced a lot of walnuts. And as I pan up, I will go slowly, giving you an idea of just how tall, how far it is up to the first limbs on these trees. And this is looking straight up. Pretty big, isn't it? You will also notice on this section here, I have completed mowing around the trees. This is how high and how you want the ground to look when you are done. Now they are ready for harvesting here. It's only about 1/3 of my forest I have actually cut the grass around there. As a certified forest by the state, I'm only allowed to cut the grass twice a year. My first cutting was the end of May, and that was more of a tree trimming from the limbs that had fallen down on the ground during the winter. And this is my second cutting, which is the middle of August, allowing me to be able to harvest the walnuts when they start falling here in the next 2 weeks, hopefully. And if you look all the way down the end, you can see the contour, and you'll see one brown spot right in the middle of the road there that I'm going to walk up to. And that is a drain that I put in because this area here was also under the same influence of water standing, which would have killed the trees. But you can see they've come out pretty good. And you notice that every other tree is a pretty thick one, and the one right next to it is not. It may even be gone. As you notice, between these two trees here where the drain is, they're missing one tree. That's a 20-foot difference between this tree here and that one there, because that tree that was in between there died away because it was always had wet feet. Northwest corner, entering the forest, and you see before you my sign. It says Certified Forest and Wildlands, Private Property, Natural Resources Stewardship for Future Generations, Division of Forestry, Indiana Department of Natural Resources. So I guess that means that I'm the natural resources doing it. This is one of the first trees that I planted. And you see it's approximately 12 to 14 inches in diameter at chest level. And as I go up, the first limb on this one is only about 15 feet because it's on the corner. It gets lots of sun. And you will notice it's angled up there. And you can see the knots where the other limbs had fallen and broken off, and it's rehealed itself. And someone wants to ask me a question about trees that are growing at angles, and I never knew what they were talking about, but I have a tree here that has an angle up in the air, and I created that angle because when this tree was lower and smaller, the top of the tree got frostbitten. So I took one of the limbs, 6-liter limbs, and bent it up and tied it off with the other one there and forgot about it. And they kept growing. So now I have a really good part of the tree that would be really good when somebody wants to have a nice piece of wood that's angular. That angular part right there is probably going to be worth as much as the rest of the tree when it gets to be turned into veneer. You will also notice that tree has got 2 circles, white circles around it, whereas this one here only has 1. That's because this tree didn't have walnuts last year, or had walnuts last year, but not this year. I'm sorry, it didn't last year, but it does this year. If you look up, you will see the walnuts up in the tree. Maybe, maybe not. If I see one, I put a circle around it. The tree right next to it, which is only 10 feet away, has 2 circles because it had walnuts last year, and it has walnuts this year. North side of the east part of the forest, and you will notice as I zoom into the grass this way, the grass has got one strip on the north side of it which is 2 inches, and the rest of the grass is 6 inches. This was to create a fire break in case we had fire during the summer. I'll bring it back to normal. And there is approximately 40 trees in this row, which makes it about 400 feet. And as you notice, these trees are the oldest trees, the first ones we put in, and they're pretty good round. They're still 10 feet apart. The diameter of them is good. And they are 40 plus feet high. I hope I'm not making you any more dizzier than I am. But I just wanted to show this part of it, and we're going to move on. Northeast corner of the woods forest. You can see my sign over here, same as in the northwest corner. And this tree is one of the original trees that has stood the ground. And if you look at it, it's probably 12 inches at chest level diameter. And as you go up, the first limb is 30 plus feet. This will be a great veneer tree. And it has lots of interesting patterns as it grows. Okay, this section of the forest are the younger trees. They're not more than 8, maybe 10 years old. And you'll notice that they are not very big, and there are a lot of lower limbs on it. And if you're going to train these trees to be veneer trees instead of nut trees, you need to take the bottom third of all the limbs off, which is what we have been doing. This is the time of the year in the fall when we'll come in and go up another 2 to 3 feet, taking those limbs off. And where we have forks in the tree, we'll decide which one is going to be the main fork and which one we shall take off. Like this one here has a fork in the tree. In this case, we're not going to take the fork. We're going to keep the one on the left, take the one on the right off. Same with this one right here. Keep one, get rid of the other one. But that's what it looks like here in the newest section of the woods, including this one here, which is still probably 5 or 6 years old. It doesn't get the sun, it won't last. But the other trees die, then that one will be the one we'll want to keep. Walking around, and there's another one there that has the fork in it. So we'll know which one to take when this fall comes. And the same here, all these lower ones will be gone. And a third of the tree, it's about 15 feet high, so it'll be up to height of our eye height, and there'll be no limbs on them. This is the southeast corner. I'm trying to find my sign. Oh, there it is. And there's the sign. And you notice these trees are less than 10 years old, and they're not more than 20 feet tall. This particular area was always wet, so we had to put a little ditch in there. And it's still wet, so we put drains in there. You can see where the brown spots are in the grass. That's where the drain is. Help the drain out so we can keep the trees there. And I'm standing in a grove of bald cypress, which do like the wet ground. However, we put 50 bald cypress in here, and we don't have but 7 left. And you can see they are quite tall, quite big around. They were all placed 10 feet apart. And they're doing well. And if I look down, you'll see there's a drain right underneath me here. And there's one over there. And all these drain into our pond, which is west of here. This is our drainage pond. As you can tell, it's been a long, dry, and hot summer. And I am very weary and depressed and shall sit down and rest. Happy hunting.